28 and
Morning, Whitney, can you hear us?
yeah, see,
Yes, good morning.
good morning. Well, just a little bit. Always have to look here. You.
Feels weird seeing yourself in the camera.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, I know. I've learned how to just ignore it. Just go on because. Laura, something over here.
So I stand like operating actually.
Do you have any applications for this? There's five. Okay. Oh,
So are you going to close session like in the middle of it or at the end? At the end of it?
put it under old business, but we'll probably want to do the business first. At the end. So this is going.
Well, good way.
I think we can restart that.
What's up?
Oh, okay.
Lori, Laura, yeah.
Was you saying we sent Lori the
Have floor.
link? Cause I was checking my email to see.
You know, right?
When do y'all like better?
She's all right. Yeah,
Do I get seeing everybody?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay.
I think they were all at the top. So this makes it a
Oh,
little bit bigger.
yeah,
Yeah,
that's,
they were all-
they look tiny.
Yeah,
Okay, yeah,
yeah.
that helps me. But if y'all want me to change it, I'll do it.
There's Laura.
Hello.
Lori. Over here. She's Becky.
Hey, Laura. Hey.
Feeling okay, Laura?
Yeah, doing good.
Good.
Get rolling in here. We should, that's everybody on Zoom, right? No, Tiffany.
Yeah, Tiffany, what question? Well,
no.
yeah, probably. We don't have any. Well, wait for Janessa, well, she can come in the other door, can't she?
Yeah, she can get in that door too. It doesn't lock.
Oh, okay.
Right.
We're ready to start and hopefully she'll be able to join us. Well, call the meeting officially to order and welcome everyone. We have a quorum and, Janessa is on her way. The text from her, she's hopefully be here shortly. We got the lead in driving from Pikeville. We have Whitney and Laura and Lori on video. So that makes over 6, 3 video and 3 presents. Okay. We'll begin with, almost forgot. Everybody knows today is Columbus Day, right?
Yep.
Or it's a Indigenous People Day.
Okay.
I like that one to respect, people who were here before, our ancestors before us. So, Columbus is okay, but like Indigenous People Day is more, so respect our roots and diversity and unfortunately, sometimes the not so nice parts about our history, but we can't change that. We just have to kind of acknowledge it and respect, hopefully move on to their better things. Ms. Guffey, there are minutes.
Hi, sorry about that. Yeah, so everyone should have received September's minutes. Did anyone have any changes that they wanted to make to those? Okay, can I get a second for the minutes?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, just one note. we're still making sure we spell Mr. Nichols' name correctly, so we made that correction. Come in, Janessa.
Hey.
Uh, So with that, all in favor of the minutes? Aye.
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 Thank you. Wonderful. Mr. Kelly.
Okay, for September, applications, LSW 2, CSW 26, LCSW 48, renewals, LSW 10,
Good.
CSW 45, LCSW 90, temporary permits, clinical 8, non-clinical 0, supervision contracts, 62 were approved, 3 were deferred. And those deferrals were connected to, marking the third box. Which means that no hours count for your LCSW.
Okay.
And I awarded 3 sponsorships.
Okay.
last month.
Very good.
That's it. Oh, and the total number of licensees was 7,822.
All right. Keep growing. That's good.
Yeah.
Questions or? All right. Motion to accept the operations report.
So moved.
Second. All right, second motion to approve the operations report. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, finance committee.
All right, so, starting out, our cash balance in the, account, that the overall account is $728,664.56. Our current appropriation for the fiscal year, as we recall, we got a sizable increase in that, so our current appropriation is $832,000. The year-to-date expended is $126,664.04, which looks like it's tracking appropriately. That's about 15% of the budget, and we're about 25% through the year, so we seem to be doing okay. I know we have fluctuations in the expenditures throughout the year for different projects, but we're doing okay right now. The unexpended amount of our appropriation is $705,336.96. And then for September specifically, the expenditures for September were $33,100.68. And revenues for September were $44,649. So I didn't see anything that looked unusual or concerning. Everything looks like it's tracking well. But does anybody have any questions about the finance?
No, but I do want to let you all know that the October through December state mileage rate is 43 cents. And that will reflect on this month's travel.
Calm down. Again,
Yeah.
again.
Couple pennies.
Oh, well.
All right.
Definitely won't get rich serving on the board. Which is, we're all used to that being social workers.
Yes.
Okay. Anything else for finance?
Just the per diem and travel. So I would move that we reimburse for the per diem and travel for this month.
So moved. Second, all right, move to second for per diem for this meeting. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, Mr. Alicari, complaint, thanks for the.
All right, we have several to present today. The first one we're gonna present today is case number 2313.3-13. Involves clinical supervision and contract. The board recommends dismissal, and there is insufficient evidence to support the initiating complaint. You notice this is from year 2023.
Yeah, it's one of our older cases, we finally got what we need to determine there was, it's not enough to proceed with anything, so dismissal is the recommendation. Yeah. And motion from the floor, from the committee, any questions?
So moved.
All in favor of dismissal? Aye.
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 All right, the next one is case number 244924-49. It involves legal involvement, it was a self-report. The committee recommends dismissal. There are no violation of laws, rules, or administrative reg governing the practice of social work. It was a self-report, the legal issues and questions has resolved, and thus dismissal.
Questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
So the next one we have is case number 2450-24-50 involving possible alleged dual relationships and or boundary violation. After reviewing the cases, the committee recommends dismissal. There's insufficient evidence to support the initiated complaint that we did not come to a conclusion that either dual relationship or boundary violation had occurred. Case number 2450.
Questions? All in favor of dismissal? Aye. Any
Aye.
opposed? Get to ask, 'cause everybody said, yeah, I saw we get to ask for negative.
The next one is case number 2456-24-56, alleged misrepresentation from the licensee. The committee recommends dismissal again. There's insufficient evidence to support the initial complaint of misrepresentation by the licensee. 24-56.
Questions? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
All right, the next one is case number 2457. It involves multiple violation, dual relationship and a boundary violation, impaired practice, child abuse. It was a complaint we received via Alaska Social Work Board. The complaint committee moves to file a notice of administrative hearing and order, and the settlement authority is given to our board counsel. Case number 24-57.
This case also involved a minor.
Yeah.
So it's a serious one we've seen like this in a while, but it came to us, the person's dual license in Alaska as well as here. And so there's the risk of behavior repeating itself, so.
And the person had surrendered their license in Alaska, no longer licensed, their license here. in Kentucky.
Here, but they voluntarily surrendered their license in Alaska. Any questions? Cause it's serious, but you need to know what's back there.
I don't know that it's really necessarily relevant, but just a metric we might want to keep track of. Is this a person that is only providing telehealth services in Kentucky, or do we know?
Reported to be providing telehealth via a foreign
A foreign country,
country.
they're located in a foreign country right now, providing telehealth.
Okay.
Reported.
Okay.
We don't know, but.
Good question, though.
Okay.
Yeah, this person not in the confines of the United States right now.
Well, I just thought we might want to track, and I'm sure we probably are somewhere, just through our complaint process, if there is any discrepancy or differences between complaints that come in for telehealth versus people there. But I guess a lot of people do both, so it may not matter, but yeah.
Yeah. Other questions? So, creed order of administrative hearing for case 24-2057. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
The next one we have is case number 2459-24-59. This one also always dual relationship and a boundary violation. The committee recommends dismissal. There is insufficient evidence to support the initiating complaint of either dual relationship and or boundary violation. 24-59.
Questions? Good. All in favor of dismissal?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Next one is case number 2460. This is the last one. 24-60, always client coaching maybe. The committee recommends dismissal. There's insufficient evidence to support the NEC complaint. So it looks like the client had voluntarily transferred to the new practice where the counselor left and no coercion or anything inappropriate had occurred during the transfer. The dismissal 24-60.
All in favor of dismissal?
Aye.
Aye.
Yeah, so I have, sorry.
Yeah, it's okay.
I have one more. I almost said this last one. Case number 24-63. It involves a court ordered involuntary assessment and or treatment. The committee recommends dismissal. There is insufficient evidence to support the initiating complaint of inappropriate assessment. So because of the court order, so like there may have been some safety issues involved. So it was done in a non-traditional setting, not in an office setting, which obviously is a standard practice for some safety concerns. Yeah. So dismissal, case number 24-63.
Questions?
So are you saying that the client who had to have an evaluation complained against the worker saying that it was an inappropriate assessment, but you think the reason why is because it was in a non-traditional setting?
It was not an office setting, it looks like there may have been legal authority involved. Looks like it was back of a vehicle, I'm assuming a sheriff's vehicle or whatnot. Probably safety issues, and sometimes if safety has to be a number one priority for everyone involved. So we didn't find anything inappropriate about the content of the assessment itself.
All in favor of dismissal? Aye.
Aye.
That's all we got.
Right, thank you, sir.
You're welcome.
Right. Applications.
Okay, well, we have a couple, we had 5, but we have 2 that we can kind of rectify here. First one, applicant number 1, this is the one that we had last month that she was reapplying to take the LCSW after the board had approved it several years ago. And we found that the hours were good, but the board wanted us to look at the job description to make sure it was not a clinical job description. And this was submitted, and it is more of a case management kind of role job description that she has been in. So we feel like she is ready and able to move on and take the exam.
Okay. All right. Sounds good. Any questions? On favor? Aye.
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 Any opposed? All right.
Okay, so the second one, we still have some questions and we want to contact the applicant to find out more information. So we'd like to defer that one and we want to set up a call.
I'm sorry, Lori, applicant.
Yes,
Applicant,
yeah,
Okay.
yes.
you want to direction for the board and make a motion or?
I don't think we have someone who applied back in the summer, and this person was still in probation, and we said that we needed proof that they were no longer in probation, which we did receive. So we feel like this person is okay to go ahead and test.
Questions?
Aye.
Aye.
All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Okay.
Number 4 is kind of in the same situation as 2. Actually, number 4 and 5 need to find out about. So we want to defer both 4 and 5 as well.
Any questions for him? All right, thank you very much. Thanks for following up on that, the first one there for us. All right, moving on to old business. Yes, tell us about new board member training.
Oh, yeah.
And all, in 25 words or less.
Fantastic. I'll just stop there. I did attend the new board member, training, 2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
It's all blurred together in DC, and it was absolutely, fantastic. I really enjoyed, the information. It was information overload, a lot in a short time, but I learned so much about regulation and how we do it in the US versus how we do it in Canada, and what's great about our board and where, what's not so good about other boards. I was telling Hank that I was so pleased that we have our own board and not a composite board with other professionals. I'm just hearing some of the things that our colleagues were saying about the difficulties involved in a composite board. And Mark, I have such a respect for you.
Oh.
Oh my gosh.
Thank you.
Oh my gosh, you and Vanessa both like, oh my goodness. And some of the struggles that other boards were dealing with, and very thankful that we have the board that we do and the people that we do. Very proud of how the board runs and the things that we do. I'm overwhelmed by how wonderful it was, and I'm ready to go to San Diego, to be honest with you. Yeah, it's just always fun to
Go to San Diego?
I'm gonna have to look at see if the registration's closed, because
No, it's not.
I love it. I love it.
Not close yet, so do we want to approve?
So moved.
Yes, I go. You want to make? Okay. Okay,
Awesome.
we go. Motion. So anybody want to, any questions? Vanessa
Second.
Going to San Diego. Yes. Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye, all right.
So you know,
Thank you.
I think. The. Hotel reservation for the group rate is like 16.
I'll get on it right away.
That was closed, that part's closed.
Yeah.
Group rate for the hotels, you want to get on that, get that, to arrange it, just mark, you're not a delegate or whatever on the.
Right.
But you can still register, so good, thank you, because, I think, Whitney's gonna be running for the nomination committee, I think for the, probably in a while, everybody knows Kentucky is there. And, I think it is, we have a lot to be grateful for and proud of because of the way we operate, and thankful to our staff as well as all y'all for being on board and everything, so we do. And, at the leadership meeting, which was, back in August, there were some of us sitting around at lunch talking, and another board wanted to know if they could be adopted by us. And I don't think we can do that. They like the way we,
Add that to the
yeah.
the licensing compact, so we can adopt a few of those other boards.
So, anyway, so, very good. Like I said, the delegate assembly is 8th, 9th. And there's the pre-meeting for administrators and board members, so you would go a day early.
Okay,
And because you can join that, so we always go a day early. Whitney, are you gonna try to go a day early too as well? So
Yes, I'll be there. Mhm.
the board member exchange, then there's administrators exchange. There's two of them, so very good, thank you. Hard to do it short. It's hard to do that short because it is a lot. It's a lot, but it's good.
So
Anyway, but God, good people. Okay, moving on to IT, Mark, we have 3 meetings this week on the application software for the initial sign off of the first step. We did talk to Tower Technologies about doing all of our forms and doing the documentation. It's a little bit of good news on the DocuSign issue is that Kentucky is electronic signature state, so we may not have to do that piece.
oh, great.
so they're gonna let us know if they think they can handle that part of it for us. Of course, that'll be another project after they get the application, but at the same time, that's in process, so we will have, probably a demo from them at some point as to how that would work. And digitize all of those forms and everything, so obviously we still have a system where people could submit paper if the system doesn't work. You know, you always have to have your backup, but that primary thing would, and then Mark can read all type of documents rather than handwritten ones.
That'll be wonderful.
Make it a little bit easier.
As an educator, I feel you.
Yeah, so we got that. The compact, with the initial meeting is reported to you, the next meeting has been set, it's January 14th. I haven't seen, I'm sure it'll be a public meeting again, so, but I haven't seen any links sent out. All I got was a notification of the date. It will be held in person and hybrid. It will be held in Lexington at the Council of Social, State Government. So there's an in-person as well as a hybrid part. That's all I've got so far on that. So, any questions or anything, feedback on contact that you've heard? Just checking. Okay. All right, moving along to regulations. Next section, next supervision rate. Okay, we put into 3,000 hours and dropped out the 60% rule there. So I have a question on that, which is at the end of that document I sent out ahead of time. Says we dropped into 60% part to go to the, we would need to change the statute that says 30 hours and 20 hours because we dropped it for the 10. Do we need to just take that out because it's no longer applicable because we're not doing 60% of 30 or 20, we're doing 3,000. So it becomes, we don't need that part of the statute to make that distinction between full-time, part-time, just leave it open-ended with 3,000 hours, the way we discussed it. Get your hours and get your supervision hours and, you know, go for it that way. And the 3,000 hours comes from the compact, is helping us match that language. So, that's where that comes from. So.
Just just to quickly, I could probably do the math and figure this out, but I can imagine one of the first questions we're gonna get is, well, does that mean 3,000 hours employed full-time, or does that mean 3,000 specific with, because if a person, depending on your setting, you know, we get into this whole issue of direct service time. So like if you work in a place that has free services, often your show rate is, you know, using the lingo, is less than if you're maybe in private, well, if not a private practice, if you're in supervision, but if you're working in a different kind of agency, you might have higher rates of people showing up. So
Yeah.
is this, we don't want to disadvantage people that are serving, you know, maybe populations that might have higher do not keep rates because of poverty or transportation or those kinds of things.
Well, I'm not sure we're saying whether it had to be paid or not.
I'm not talking about, I don't mean paid, I mean like, does it mean, before if it said you had to be, if you were employed full-time, it was 60% of your time was spent, I think, in direct client services. I'm just saying if we get into splitting hairs, which some people will do, you know, does that mean you've seen X number of clients per week for a full-time? I don't think I'm making a lot of sense. I think Vanessa's nodding. You hear what I'm saying. Maybe you can explain this better.
You are, but I think what we're, at least the way I understood is that we're just trying to take, in other words, it's not a matter of whether you're working 10 hours a week or whatever hours a week. It's just, you just have to get a total number. However you get there is left between you and, you know, the employer, how you get there. They just need to know you need to get to that a number of hours. Is that right? Or
Winnie, I think that I think it's covered when it says direct client professional relationship there. That's what you're saying. I think you were asking about that. I think it's actually covered. And it would be very difficult to split hairs with that because they're saying you have to have that 3,000 hours of
what that means. The reason I'm asking that is some of the supervision that I do in different, they get into all these semantics. So like if you are seeing a client, obviously that's direct client services. Well, what if you're spending an hour having a conversation with another professional about their case? Or what if you're, doing this, that, or the other? Is it really direct? I mean, it is direct services. Some entities, at the state level, like funding stuff will say, yes, that's direct service, or no, that's not. And that's where I'm saying people may start going, well, I need a lot of clarification.
Right,
I
well,
see what you mean.
Yeah, okay, yeah, that makes sense. Same thing, it's kind of like, if they have a staffing or treatment team, is that included? I don't know, I mean, what do y'all
I mean,
want to do? Cause that's always been the issue under the 60% thing too, because it was never clarified. Do we want to?
I think it is clinical in nature,
It is.
Right.
so
It is.
It is.
it is experience.
Yeah.
Continuity of care.
And even more so, if you're staffing, you're hearing of other cases, and so the learning continues, I think.
Okay. So
I think
we might want to look at, when we say direct responsibility and whatever, add something in that part about what that means, what could it be included? Would that help?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know that it sounds like we're on the same page as everyone who's spoken up, that we're not gonna try to bar people from using time that maybe they had an appointment scheduled and somebody didn't show up. I'm just saying that I know in the workplace that this sometimes becomes an issue because people are held to a certain standard, like we need you to get 55% direct client productivity. But how they define that differs based on the grant funding or blah, 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 and then they can get into these
Yeah.
kind
Well,
of
that
mental gymnastics about how all that works.
Well, we already get calls about that.
Okay.
Like licensees, supervisees had questions, they're like, well, I didn't see, too many clients today to get direct time. However, I was in a staff meeting and there was a crisis with another client that I sat in on. Does that count? And I'm like, sure, that counts.
clinical in nature.
So I've been telling them
Yeah.
that, steering them that way anyway.
Okay, well, why don't we work on some language around that to help clarify that in the rate for everybody? That makes sense, in a sense of doing that, if we're already kind of moving in that direction to try to.
Because it just, I know when I was under supervision, my clinical supervisor allowed me to.
Yeah, I remember that.
Staffing.
Yeah, staffing.
Learning doesn't just happen one-on-one with the clients that you're
Right.
seeing, yeah.
It's kind of like you mentioned continuity of care, sometimes that process is not a billable service, so it doesn't get captured. When you're making a referral, or even discharge plan or something like that.
Research.
Yeah.
Research best
Research.
practices,
Yes.
yeah, all of that.
All right, let's look at some language on that, maybe
Sure.
it's a good point, so, okay, good. Put that over there, okay. The next section, part of that is just. We defined electronic, virtual, and divisions in the definition part, so it doesn't have to be defined here. And then it's the next part that is kind of getting into that, issue about, that we raised last time. Sometimes we had this one about, there's 2 hours every 2 weeks and the additional supervisor and how much and whatever, so that's just a initial throwing out some language on that, so how far we wanted to get into that. But it does help make that distinction, whereas your supervisor, the supervisor of record responsible for, do you want to be responsible for the bulk of the supervision, or I just put the 75, it's just arbitrary.
So that's like 50%. Comfortable with that?
I don't know.
2%?
Yeah, like I said, I was just trying to get something on.
That's a lot by somebody else.
I know, that's.
But then at the same time. I was
Well, they
like,
can still only
Maybe it's not though.
Yeah,
50 hours of. So as long as it's one-on-one, I don't, if I recall, the issue was concerned that people are offloading their individual supervisees onto other people in their workplace and not really taking care of their responsibilities. So.
Just a hypothetical situation, let's say somebody signs a contract, let's say an agency to receive individual supervision from a board of supervisor, but simultaneously, somebody there provides group supervision. So if they're meeting with you once a week and meeting with the other person once a week, by the time you're done, you're gonna be 50-50. So that makes, and that's a typical situation in most places. Where people are getting 1 hour of supervision from individually and then meeting with somebody else who provides group supervision, so. So if everything works out, 50-50 is what they will get to, or 48-52 or whatever, percentage wise.
Yeah.
Yeah, think of it before, so we need to kind of make sure that we.
What other states do, do other states address this?
Some
Good, we're just so
states
good.
don't even have a contract.
Yes, Ohio, you need to have a contract.
They
with
don't have a
Congress.
contract.
I did learn that.
They have it
Yeah.
now, I believe. They
I
have it
mean,
now.
it's kind of like, oh,
Yeah.
so it's like they don't, so, like, okay. Oh, and then we get into temporary suspension of the supervision. So that's a whole other issue that we brought up, which is part, it's been questioned to the board, or, Mark gets these questions. Tried to make it kind of generic. So that we don't have to get into the reasons for the suspension, it's like they have, they have to report,
It's 5 days enough for that.
I don't know, I found that in another rig, that was in another rig, so that's why it's there.
Well,
That was my thought initially was,
Yeah, that was from another rig.
because it
Uh,
gives you the time for, without somebody emailing you every day, but it's 5 days enough. 5 business days, sorry.
Yeah, I don't know. And then it had the tag on there that if it's not responding, then it's provisionally approved. I don't know if you want that, I forget where I got that, but it was some other reg that I was looking at about it.
about that right away. I mean, if they call me and I'm on the phone with them, we're gonna hammer out a decision.
Right.
Because the number one reason most people want to temporarily suspend their supervision is maternity leave.
Yeah.
Sure.
And so I'm gonna say, sure.
Yeah.
Go ahead. Suspend your supervision and let us know when
When you come back.
you come back.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of like trying to keep it from being too much and instead of and that's why I say I went to, there was another, I got that.
So you think 5 days is enough then?
Yeah, I think so.
Just want to make sure that,
It's okay.
Yeah,
that it's comfortable with everything you all have to do, that you can get to it, yeah.
yeah, because I mean, we're pretty immediate. I mean, we.
And if he's not here, then I can tell him.
And I think the added clause, if no response is received, it is automatically by default considered approved until the board decision, then that kind of gives you a blanket. If you
Right.
can't,
Oh, okay.
And
If you can,
so
then
that
it's
if it
still-
doesn't get done in 5 days, then they can go ahead and suspend without having to go, okay, I can't suspend it.
yeah, in this situation, since there's an absence of practice, I think it becomes less of a concern. If it was like approving and if you don't respond, it's approved, that would be concerning.
Right.
But somebody's omitting the clinical practice, I think that's fair.
Some of the other regs I looked at said if they didn't have client contact for X number of days, then blah, blah, and it seemed to over complex it, so I was trying to keep it a little bit simpler.
Yeah.
Simple is better.
And whatever reason, I mean, if they have a reason to suspend, I don't know why we would object.
Right.
Just, okay, and the supervisor sent in the document the hours at that point, so you have that, so in case something happens.
Like, we're not gonna force you to stay in supervision.
Well, we're not gonna force you to say, you've got any reason not to. So,
Yeah, usually if somebody calls and says they want to suspend their supervision, I
Yeah.
believe them.
right,
I mean, I believe their reason.
right,
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 yeah.
I don't think we need to hold it over their head or.
Right.
Right.
You know. And then when they're ready to notify the board that they're ready to go back to supervision, so we know there's communication there, so.
And people do live.
So. Does that make sense, or Lori, would that help for schools? For you sometimes with school social work, or do you think it applies?
I mean, as far as like suspending their,
Yeah, in summer schools, you know, when summer
Yeah.
happens.
yeah, in
They
summer, we don't have any clients that we
Exactly.
see really unless you're in like summer school
Right,
and
right,
that's
right.
not as, doesn't happen as often as it used to.
Right, so just trying to keep that in mind, we make it simple, so, you know. Virtual supervision is just, you know, basically the stuff. The stuff and all that, and it's standard. Yeah. I was trying to get at, the next part was, you know, it's just the competence of using that, and then that's the focus is on the welfare of the client. I mean, our supervision is focused on the welfare of the client, not, you know, I mean, that's a piece of it, that's why we do supervision. And then, we talked about having, you know, like the follow-up supervision, the 3 hours, and it doesn't just rehash the same thing as the 6 hours, which is what it seems to right now be. Just kind of expanding those things and then pointing out areas of responsibility for the supervisor under that, kind of looking at both of that, those pieces. Being a little more specific about that, that might be too much, but just some thoughts.
So I have a question, and this is just because I am CSW and not LCSW or I've been a supervisor, but when we talk about engaging in virtual supervision shall be competent in the use of technology platforms, the training to become a supervisor, does it include a technology aspect? Is that one of the requirements for it?
Well,
Hmm.
technically, we don't have anything.
It is expected.
Right.
It's expected.
Have we written it anywhere?
It's
Um,
expected.
Just, you know, just kind of curious because that would help a lot to make sure we're increasing the competence. Right? Especially talking about HIPAA compliant platforms and things like that, whereas a lot of people may not be as familiar with that as we would like for them to.
In my role as really
Right,
fit for that.
right.
I'm not sure everybody does. That's why when we get to the other part of this reg that says what to be included in that training,
Right,
we want to write that in there.
exactly. That's what I was just thinking, that might be a good idea. Include the tech piece, just to make sure that, I mean, it's so important. I mean, it's the future.
Yeah, so other than, I guess, the private practitioners, if you're willing to provision, so that pretty meticulous about, oh yeah, requiring you to take training and knowledge, you know, even.
Yeah, I guess what I was thinking though, you know, with those that are in practice that still may be,
Yeah, that becomes tricky a little bit, yeah.
you know, not on the technology game yet. Still a lot to offer in terms of supervision and stuff, but may not be as tech savvy as what we would expect. And that might be important for them to
Absolutely.
have some of that training. And if nothing else, it's a review for the rest of us and a reminder of, you know, new things that we have.
Well. You just create
How
your
to
own-
use AI.
just create your own Zoom avatar. You know,
Right.
Zoom has avatars now. We can create.
Ethical use of technology, let's make sure it says that.
Right.
Yeah, that's their new feature. You can create your avatar to go to the meeting for you.
Oh, goodness.
Okay. All right. Anyway, yeah, no, that's a good point, okay. Stating that the supervisor, additional supervisor can become the kind of supervisor record has to change. I don't know if that needs to be stated, but we talked about it. So that's theirs. And then reporting. Oh, that part, last part is the number 8. I don't, it's the wording, not. Trying to capture the idea that if somebody, because we put in there, somebody suspends. You don't lose your hours, so that everybody doesn't have that question to the board or to the office that, oh, if I suspend, I lose my hours. Because say they were in a car accident and the rehabilitation was for a long period of time. Did they lose their hours? So I was trying to come up with something that said, bitch, or once it's documented, once you get, the board gets that documentation form, those hours are good. I know it wasn't gonna make, and that's where I put, do we put a time limit on it or not? I don't know. That was where, because it was kind of like an instance, well, somebody suspends their supervision or license goes inactive. And 5 years later, they come back, can they count those hours? I don't know.
I think they should.
I think so. I mean, maybe not 30 years, but.
I don't know whether it's a good
I
time
think
or not, and there was one rig I read, we're having 2 years, so that's what that.
5 to 7 years, maybe even 10. I don't know. I just think about like best practices and how best practices change, how often they change.
Yeah.
I mean, even when we're years, right, to show evidence based. So,
Yeah, because we have the testing to complement the knowledge
Yeah.
and whatnot, so. Because I think, it is already difficult, to get supervision for it, so, you've earned it, knowledge, you learn,
well, and the other piece of that too is that, women who may want to stay home or men who may be staying at home with children
Yeah.
would need more than 2 years if they're suspending for,
Yeah.
to be a stay-at-home parent.
So,
Or, an ill child or, a cancer battle or something, that might take longer than a couple of years would be important. So maybe there is no time limit. Maybe
I think there should be some time with that.
because there is an exam.
Yeah, you can't you go to a university and have like 60 credit and go back in 15 years and then. You don't lose credit because you're gone.
Doesn't mean.
Right,
Yeah.
again, testing.
Absolutely, yeah.
so do we need a time limit?
I don't think. we should.
No.
Only thing we might want to say, I agree with all of that. I think if they've earned it, but we might, and maybe it already says it somewhere else, we may need to specify the importance of getting that documentation form in. Where I could see this being dicey, and we've seen this before, is when people don't get that turned in. And then their supervisor has died, or they've disappeared, or they're no longer licensed, and then that gets really dicey because whatever evidence they have of receiving the supervision, we can't really verify.
Right.
So rather than say, we'll keep it for 2 years and after that it's 0, we might just say, if you have not gotten this in within 2 years of the supervision, then we can't guarantee it'll be counted or something to that effect, because that would protect us from these nightmares where people are like, well, I got supervision and I can't find this person, but I want you to count it anyway. And it just might make that more clear.
In fact, the supervisor should submit that, if the supervision ends. They should submit that documentation form within a week or so.
They don't.
They don't.
They don't.
Don't.
Right. Or at least give it to the supervisor.
Yeah, let's give
Put
it
it in
to
their
their
hands.
supervisee, so they have that.
So ultimately, in my book, it rests with the supervisee. Is their
Yes.
ability to act and demand for the supervision hours you have.
Right.
Yes.
It's their interest. As a supervisor, it's best practice too, but the supervisor needs to know that if I don't get it signed and obtained, if my supervisor dies or gets fired or vanishes, I'm out of luck. So you have to, if you're not getting it,
There are some oppositional defiant supervisors of record out there.
No, what?
more than.
Yeah.
Hey, Fox, he's looking at you when he said that.
Surely you jest.
Are you one of those, Hank?
No.
It won't release those hours.
Yeah.
They just, they're just like,
They just.
Well, I didn't do them because I didn't do them.
Yeah, well, they decided to do it, you know.
I mean, that's been said.
I didn't do them because I just didn't do them.
I didn't do them.
Oh,
Because you require the supervision experience and form from every single supervisor
could have been.
that they're claiming hours for, right?
Yes.
So if
Yeah,
the
I always
supervisor-
suggest to
Maybe one,
supervisors,
maybe
you
five.
kind of
That's what I'm
run a
saying,
list of
supervisor.
hours and sign off on them, and
Exactly.
have a copy to the supervisor every month.
Right?
You know, we have our practice students do this when we're training them.
Yeah.
You'd think that folks would be used to that kind of process too, if they're, especially if they're taking students. So,
Yeah,
goodness
okay.
gracious.
A three-word that to be, you know, submit documentation forms so you
Sure.
keep the hours you earn, okay? All right, last part of this one is, other jurisdictions, we hashed about this before too, which kind of put back in, is basically these other jurisdictions, which is where it was kind of like trying to allow, I think, you know, we went over this, you know, it's kind of got going back over this, what did all that mean? And why do we have those three boxes on the, that gets confusing on the contract? Is that it was trying to say that a supervisor, somebody from out of state could be a supervisor for Kentucky, which conflicts with the other part that says you have to be a licensed in Kentucky to be a supervisor. So it was a conflict. So I'm thinking maybe, and I don't know whether we need to word it here, because if you just change the wording the way it is and take out that they can apply to be a supervisor, it basically says if they're applying to get a Kentucky license, do they have to have the 3,000 hours and the 150 hours to get a license in Kentucky? And that's a whole issue, but because of the compact, we are accepting other licenses, so that's probably a moot point anymore. So we probably ought to just say, yeah, if they've been licensed for, if they were licensed for 2 years and have 3,000 hours and a license in that other state, we'll give them a license in Kentucky. They don't have to have supervision. In other words, it exempts them from the supervision is what it does. If, as long as the other license is unencumbered, using the compact language. In other words, they don't have any complaints and that kind of stuff in their other state, then they could get a license here without getting a contract, and that's what this is attempting to try to say. To clarify that so that you don't have to have that extra box about transition, because the way it's worded didn't make any sense to us. We wanted to take that off. You know, but if they are not, don't have independent practice, you know, in other words, they didn't get their independent practice, then they would have to come in and get a contract. So that's why it's broken up that way, to try to clarify all of that. Then if they're, you know, adding on, if they're part of a compact, then no, they don't have to get supervision. That's what those three pieces are trying to address. So, does that make sense, or questions? Well, because it's like, you know, I think we were clear that we were trying to make sure we stick with, if you want to be a supervisor in Kentucky, you have to be licensed in Kentucky. Because make the regs apply to you because you're a licensee versus, oh, well, hey, if you get licensed somewhere else, then you can still be here, and then, wait a minute, we don't have jurisdiction over it except for the contract. Which was a conflict with what was said earlier, so.
But I think the exception, I know we have before, if someone is working in a federal entity, we have approved supervision, given they do the supervision training, correct? Would that be licensed in Kentucky? I think the board have done that before, at least some cases that I know of.
All right, good deal. All right. A work in progress still. I'll work on some language about that, bring it back. On to the student intern committee, we met, had a very good discussion. We have a new member, Tony, Helm. Did I get that right, Tony Helm?
Yes.
Yeah, for the following, he, kind of leads the program field directors for the KASW. So then that we had, was able to attend the KASWE meeting virtually on Friday before. And it's a good discussion, and the committee is okay with us looking at some language to change the statute to, because the first step, if we're gonna do a provisional license, would be to have statutory authority. So we'd be wording the statute for say, this is how the temp permit is worded, so I'll read that. And you got a copy of this, so the board may establish by promulgation of administrative regulations, the requirements for temporary permits to practice social work. That's all it says. This would say the board may establish by promulgation of administrative regulations, the requirements for provisional licenses to practice social work. So we kind of matching the same language and just, give statutory authority. As far as the reg goes, there's a lot of questions that we need to ask, answering that, but we don't need to start working on those specifics. We've got kind of an outline, a sketch of some things we talked about, like the caseload, might be like 15, or if the educational agreement said 5, then it would be 5.
Defining scope.
Defining scope of practice, and all that would be in the reg. And then, the other piece of this is that Medicaid reg about behavioral health associates, which we checked this morning, it's still on the agenda to be approved tomorrow, at the AIRS, committee at, tomorrow, which allows an agency to employ someone in a graduate school to do therapy in outpatient setting. Right now, student in the MSW program can't do that because of the way our law is, so a provisional license will allow us to find that scope of practice and let, at a certain point in their career, in their graduate program, have that kind of employment and be like it. So it's not the payer thing for us, it's the licensing to their scope of practice for us. But it would fit under that if that came about as well. Regardless of that, if we move forward, we don't need to worry about the payer part, it's just what the scope of practice is for our students.
I think I have a question about the language on this one. Is there ever any other reason other than the student situation that we've been talking about that we would issue a provisional license?
It's possible.
Okay, because that's what I was curious about, because I really wish there were some way, like if we're not going to do provisional license in some other way, that we specifically mention the provision of license to students, right? I don't know, and that's just me as a preference, because I do think that you will get more support from the education side if you are saying this is for a student support, and if it specifically mentions student, just from what I've been hearing from the feedback.
Okay.
But maybe not. It would be great to talk to them, but I was wondering if there's some way that we say, we're addressing this with students if they meet, this definition.
Right, and I was just mentioning the 10th.
No, I agree, but I'm wondering if that's not an idea.
We want to do.
But if we are thinking that we might give them provisionally to someone other than a student, then maybe we don't need to do that.
When you said that, what the thought came to my mind is that we have a reg right now for equivalency.
Right,
Which
right.
is hard
It's hard to get if you've not.
really hard to
Yeah,
use.
yeah.
Which this would open that up in a sense to be able to look at that in a different thing. But maybe we need to specify it, I don't know.
I just wonder if we wouldn't get more support from the educators if we said that this is something.
For students.
Yeah, and not to mention, and this is, I almost hate that this is live stream, because listen, I may not be right about this, you all. But I do know that on the social work side, if I understand this correctly, that student loans and aid packages in some way can help pay for cost of things, right? But it would have to be tied to the educational piece.
Okay.
And so if it said student, to where student aid offices could say, this is a requirement of the state, then it can be tied to their cost and they can pay for it
Good call.
out of that money, if that cost is gonna be passed on to the students. Some schools may pick it up. I'm just trying to think ahead of
Yeah.
how that financial aid piece often works for students, and they can say, okay, I've got a plan.
Yeah.
They'll add, and they put it on their website, so students know it's coming. I'm gonna pay $75 or whatever it's gonna be. I'm not saying it would be 75, I'm just throwing that number out there. I have to pay X amount of money for a provisional license in this program. So it kind of just lets them, it's all about the transparency of cost and what costs we're passing on to our students.
Yeah.
So it was just an idea. I don't even know if it's possible, but it is an idea
Yeah.
for us to think about.
Yeah, we want to specify that this is just for students. We can write that in here right now.
I think
I
we
think
should.
so. They
I
can get
like
a
that
tip.
idea.
Yeah, it's a good idea,
It's-
yeah.
Well, I
I
think
mean-
it kind of makes it feel a little special too, right?
Yeah.
They're like, oh, I can get a license as a student to do this, and it adds some legitimacy to their training, I think.
Yeah.
Well, we have temporary permits for everybody.
Yeah, no,
Right.
we do, that's true.
And they
We do.
can't
So-
get those unless we have their official
Yeah,
transcript, but with
right.
the
So we can just put
provisional,
students
we
here
might be able to use that
to
as a-
practice social, visual
Yes.
license for students. For students.
Another benefit of doing that is we've talked about a very, very low cost. And I
Oh,
think that I would, and definitely, I mean, like $5. I think
Right.
it would be harder to sell if we said everybody who gets a provisional license is gonna be $5 because other people may be, you know, adult professionals. I mean, well, a lot of our students are adults, so they are adults. I don't mean it like that, but I
Right.
mean, they may be people that are working full-time and are not having the burden of being a student. So I think it also makes it easier to have a different cost schedule that would be much lower.
So
Yes.
would you just put, is it okay, and Mr. Nicholas can help us with that, is it okay just to say provisional license for students to practice social work?
We should probably say social work students,
Social work student.
or maybe students in an
In an
accredited,
accredited social work in an approved. I
accredited
think the
social
language
work.
in the, like, we have to say approved, board approved, whatever. Board approved. Social, a board approved education program,
Because
Which
goodness
is-
gracious, if we said students, we'd have psych
know.
and soc and
yeah.
Oh, yeah.
criminal justice and everybody wanting to get a provisional license.
That's already defined elsewhere. So, yeah, we would say for students in an approved, in a board approved educational institution, which is already defined elsewhere. Okay.
I love it.
I wonder, it may not be the place for it, but I just think the messaging is so important.
Sorry.
And I kind of am on both sides of this. I'm an educator, but I'm also a board member and understand that part. So like Janessa also, I don't know if it's appropriate to put the purpose of it in in the actual legal writing. Like the purpose of this is to provide social work students with opportunity. That's really what this is about, is making sure that they have the same opportunity that a big part of it, to my mind, that they have the same opportunities as students who are in other types of educational preparation, but also to provide some accountability so they're not being taken advantage of by employers who don't understand the scope of practice and all of that. I just wonder if that would improve the support if we're very clear about the whole point of all this is to try to stop the deprofessionalization also. I mean,
I think that's gonna be part of our presentation about this, because we get too much into purpose legally, we get,
I think it's the educational thing for us. I think that as we're
we
Sharing it
might have to
across the
share some of
state,
that
yeah.
language in the reg itself.
yeah,
Because we have to establish the purpose of the reg, so we can put that as the purpose of the reg. Because we don't, I mean, that's the key piece of why we're doing it, as far as students.
yeah, absolutely.
So good, very good, very good, very good. Okay, we also talked about, Vanessa brought this to our board meeting last time about having a license, licensure, and I looked back and asked the what titles do they use for this? And that's where this license master software is used predominantly.
Yeah.
So anyway, and so I just took the language that's typical. It would be putting it into the practice without a license part with titles, and then 18, and then most important part is look at the last 2 or 3 3 or 4 really. The rest of it is kind of standard. It's not gonna be for clinical work, so that's clear up front. And then Janessa and Whitney, y'all can help, especially with the language here. And I tried to get some ASWB language.
Sure.
So I don't know if I've captured that. Here for the graph. I like, you know. You like it? Okay. Trying to capture the whole.
Is it possible, would it be possible? I think it would be, but I just wanna check. For someone to hold a dual license in Kentucky with that, so like the CSW, and could I also be an LMSW? And if that's the case, then maybe we have to be careful about how we say cannot engage in the practice of clinical social work. Because if I'm CSW, I could be under supervision.
I
and
don't,
work.
you wouldn't need to have both though, because they're both master's level.
Right. I mean,
Licenses.
can I get licensed? Like, I passed the CSW, right? So can I? appeal the board and be like, okay, I want, not appeal, but apply that LMSW. But I currently hold the CSW, right? So do I have to choose which license that I'm putting behind my name? Or can I put both? Do you see what I'm saying? It's like you already have this CSW. It is just different titles.
I just, I don't think a CSW would need an LMSW, but a person that had an LMSW that didn't want to do clinical work can have that instead.
Right, so I'm licensed as a CSW for a long time. Right. I would rather have the LMSW, but I mean, I had this CSW for a while. If we pass this on, of course, I would want to apply for it. So then do I have to give up the CSW? That is the credential that I have though. For the LMS.
You don't have to. You could.
Right.
You could have LMS.
So will the board recognize me as licensed in both areas where I could go under clinical supervision if I'm wanting to later?
I would say yes. I would
Yeah.
say yeah. I would say yeah. It's a macro. So. Want to keep both.
But do we want to be careful? Right, so that's what I was gonna say, we have, we hit the CSW, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So we do have the CSW. So. Do we want to with the practice of social work, there are within LMSW that if somebody like me also has CSW, right?
Should we say that the would choose it, who would want to practice clinical work, but also
Would I go under supervision? I wondered if we need to add that in there as language. So there's not a loophole. And it may not apply to like but me and 3 other people. I don't know. But still, there'll be me and 3 other people for the loophole.
one. You know, it's kind of just thought. We might be able to
We might be able to get that in the supervision, right? Yeah.
to say
Right. Is that seeing you all now feeling like you were earlier? I don't feel like I'm being very clear, but I do think it is something that you might have somebody like me would come and ask, and I'd be like, hey, I want this, but I'm already I don't want to give that up because
I might want to go to clinical later.
well, you know, sometimes we like to have lots of letters behind their names. It's an ego thing. We just like to show all those credentials. So I don't know, I just wanted to see if that was.
I have an MSSW, not MSW. Yeah.
Or we combine it, I'll combine all the letters,
Right. Mhm. Yeah.
make up a new
Yeah.
category.
When I graduated, I was told to collect all the letters after my name. I could.
That's what they do here. So I
The whole. That's it, we're in our meeting with those lines on. Want to locate the social worker and, an issue of the system of. State meeting up to five, so we had 2 o'clock. And the discussion is, July and D, we don't need to add it. They're trying to 11, section 6, certainly a person locally or currently the works via television. Realized that it was. We don't know. It's not. Our word for so. Section 7, wouldn't get a real reason. So just basically protect the internet of law, that's really what it says. Because when we have 2 CS being used in the state for practice without license, because they're thought they could go by Kentucky law, let other states know you're here, or you're providing services to somebody. Instead of yes, service regardless. So, yeah. Budget. There. In. Okay, so. Servers, and they don't want to just think they have word changes, but then they don't want it in there at all. So. Mr. Riggleman gave a good argument. The language using to clear out of the, so we didn't pass the boards. And so, bring out of our the method of behavioral handling. So we'll be meeting again Wednesday this week. Guys, thoughts? You know, we can get that cheap drafted, so it gets her, to get into the, assembly. With, we're meeting with Shorelines and NASW and Clinical Society, so I don't get. All right, the next item is job evaluation. I'd like to put that to the end of the meeting because we will go session that way we go. But people and I have sat around and they want because I don't know how long it'll be. Hopefully not very long, but who knows? All right. Executive order, I'll give you a copy of Governor Beshear's executive order. Compare that with any social worker, anybody who wants to find it. It's for under 18. Just basically, if we get a report on, Mr. Rose, you can help us. If we make a complaint on conversion therapy, there's a complaint under that order, right?
Yes.
Okay.
With laxatives or put it on the side or something.
I was not, but I think.
It's part of our educational campaign, maybe, you know. Yeah.
Anyway,
Do you have that digital version?
I got a good idea.
Yeah, because I'd like to send it out to, you know, like our field instructors and just other people we have in our networks. We could send it so much easier if it's digital.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did I put that on the?
I think that I got executive order on it. I saw, and maybe it wasn't, I didn't see it, but I saw the other.
It's in there.
Okay, so just stop. I guess. All right, okay, all right, next is, retreat. And I wanted to bring it back up, to comment on, you know, there was the other board, like, et cetera, and the visitors on board. Again. And science. For. That helps. And helps. And we. That. So this is discuss.
Is the annual report something that Mark would instruct with your help or?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.